Zach will hand you a microphone.
I'm just here so I don't get fined, actually. No, thank you guys for coming. I don't have much. I mean, I guess I would just say I enjoyed watching my kids play youth sports this weekend. What I would have rather been coming back from LA for sure. So happy to open it up for questions.
Tyler, wait for the mic.
Matt,
Wait for the mic.
do you have any update on Brandon right now? What his status is and what you've learned?
Yeah, he's going to be looked at this week. We're optimistic, but we'll never know until the reports come out. But we're going to wait until he gets another opinion on the shoulder at this point.
Adam, wait for the mic.
Matt, can you expand on that? What does optimistic look like? Is it ready for opening day?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, it's hard to say at this point. I mean, anytime you have any issues with the shoulder, it's hard to know exactly because it's so complicated. So many mechanisms within the shoulder that we know are a factor, and it is more complicated than the elbow. But it's hard to say from my perspective. We'll wait until we get the evaluation.
Steve?
Just wondering, has Craig given you any timetable, any idea of when he might make a decision, and how are you handling that? Have you spoken to him regularly? Are you just keeping hands free, let him take his time, or how do you do that?
Yeah, we're certainly, I appreciate the question. We're not going to put any timetable on Craig. He is, we're in regular conversation with him, and I'm excited about having those conversations with him and looking forward to hopefully having some news for you guys soon if possible. But either way, we're going to be prepared to have a manager next year if it's not Craig. But I want to keep every line open for communication here with Craig as much as we can because he's our top choice here for sure.
Lance? Up here.
Matt, just to follow up on that, does it make you more nervous the longer it goes, or do you just kind of let it play out? You kind of said you'd let it play out, but does it make you a little nervous the longer it goes and he's just thinking about things?
No, I want to respect Craig. I want to respect the time that he's put into this franchise and the opportunity that he has in front of him. We have a really good relationship, and so I think it's first and foremost what's best for him and his family for sure. But I'm excited to obviously partner with him. I've loved working with him for many years, and I hope he's here a long time.
Kurt?
Matt, is there some sort of weird, odd kind of waiting period that you guys have? Because you can't start one process and kind of just got to wait for an answer?
No, I really don't want to put a timetable on it for Craig out of respect to him and the opportunity he has here. I want what's best for Craig first and foremost, and I obviously want that to be here with the Brewers.
Stephanie?
I know you mentioned no timetable, but what does Craig Counsell mean to this organization, and how badly do you guys want him back again next season?
Yeah, I mean, he's maybe one of the best people I've ever worked with. I really, really enjoy working with him. He challenges us in great ways. We see the world differently. I think it's healthy. I think he means a lot to this community. He's done a lot. He's been a player here. His dad worked here. He's grown up here. He's special. He is definitely special to this team. And like I said, I hope we partner together for a very long time.
Adam?
I have a non-Craig Counsell question, if that's okay.
Sure.
This exit came a lot sooner probably than you or anyone here wanted or anticipated. Did this one hurt more than any of the others?
Yeah, that we're not that far removed from it. Yeah, I think it might have. I think, look, we talked with our staff yesterday about how I think as a group we're disappointed with the ending, but we're not disappointed with our season. I think there's a definite distinction between those two. Proud of the people that we have here, proud of the good work that we've been able to do here, but we didn't finish the way we had hoped. And I think exiting after one series is always hard to swallow. But we felt like we had a championship caliber team here this year.
Todd?
I think you kind of answered what I was going to ask you. I was going to ask about squaring what was a really good regular season with the disappointing exit in the playoffs. And, some people externally would look at that as a failure, not being able to advance and not winning a game on your home field. How do you look at that?
Yeah, I think that's the right way. Honestly, Todd, I think we've tried to separate them, but it doesn't make it any easier because we're all disappointed. I think you got a lot of people in this building that are disappointed with how we finished. But I think the more you get away from it, the more you get to appreciate all of the good that we have here. We have a lot of good things. We have a lot of things we can build upon. Won the division by 9 games. We won 92 games this season. There's a lot to be proud of here, for sure.
Go Steve.
Just when you look at the roster, where do you see where you need to get better to kind of take that next step? Is there a particular area just in terms of whether it's power, whatever?
Yeah, I think, Steve, it's probably across the board, honestly. That's something that, again, I mentioned this to our staff yesterday. We're going to take an assessment of our entire organization and how we can get better. As I mentioned, we've had success, but we're not comfortable with where we are. We want to win the last game of the season. And I think that's really important to us. It's important to our fans. And so I think that it's going to be a long process to evaluate where we can better. And I think it starts with just evaluating everything across the board.
You just mentioned there you're not comfortable with where you are. These last few years, it's been the first round playoff exits. How do you guys view that? It's the really good regular season, and then just these short series don't go your way. Is it just total baseball randomness still at this point, or is there something more to it now that it's been 5 years or so?
Yeah, look, it is certainly difficult when you have a season that is defined by one series, and I think that's a real thing. We've certainly had success in the playoffs, but at the same time, we have exited early. But the fact that we're there, I think, gives us that opportunity to go deep. And honestly, we did feel like we had a championship caliber team this year, and that's why it makes it more difficult, honestly, for our staff. But we have pretty good resolve in this group, and I think we're going to get after it. We already are getting after it for what we can do better in the future.
Back to Stephanie.
I know it's been a week, but what is your message to Brewers fans after the way the season ended?
I think honestly it is just that we are dedicated to winning the last game of the season. That is our goal. It's not just to get in. We want to try to win a World Series here. I think that's really important to our community. It means a lot to a lot of people, starting with Bob Euchre, right? The kids that drive down here from northern Wisconsin for a game. Our ownership, our fans, everybody, I think, our community. It means a lot, and so that is our goal.
Can we pin you down on one thing? You answered before about looking at the whole organization, but if there's one thing that one area, specific area of the team that you think could make a difference moving forward, that you'll really look to improve this offseason, what would that one thing be?
I don't know if it's honestly. I don't know if it is just one thing because I think the talent dictates. I think where you want to improve, and I think we're a long way from opening day. We've tried to raise the floor here, I think, in a lot of ways, and so I think we also want to raise the ceiling. And I think to the extent that we can add better players, whether it's on the offensive side, defensively, or pitching, I think we're going to certainly look to do just that.
Hey, how comfortable is the organization with Aaron Ashby's health, given how he performed at the end of the season?
Yeah, obviously, that is another tough injury that he sustained. The reports I've gotten just recently from him throwing are actually really, really positive. The velocity was trending up in a really good way. He's in great spirits. He's a great kid. I know he's working his tail off, and all he wants to do is throw the baseball forward. So that's all that guy cares about, and I'm excited about him for what he can do for us next year.
I know you would never say names, but would you like to be active in the trade market?
Certainly, yeah, we're very active. I think we look to add talent wherever it comes from, whether that's trade, free agency, across the board. We're looking to get better.
Again, up top, Lily.
I know you have roster decisions to make, but just in regards to Mark and Carlos, what did you like about them that you wanted to bring them to Milwaukee, and how do you think that they helped your team down the stretch there?
Yeah, they did a tremendous job. I mean, both as leaders and players on the field, both those guys had enormous hits for us. Loved having them here. Carlos brings us coffee every day, right? And beyond that, he's just beyond the coffee. I mean, he's just a great teammate and he's a great player. And we saw it on both sides of the ball. And then Mark as well just got some enormous hits for us, and we were thrilled to have him as well.
Kurt?
Speaking of Mark, he's got that option for next year. Where do you guys stand? Obviously, a decision doesn't have to be made yet, but where do you stand as of now with that?
Yeah, he did a lot of things really well. It's still early to probably make that decision at this point, but he's put himself in a really good spot here and did everything the right way here for us for sure.
Lance? Middle?
Man, I know it's kind of like a game of poker, but you do have a lot of talented outfielders, a lot of young outfielders. What decisions need to be made there? Are you going to have to make some tough decisions there to get, playing time and people in the right spots and then figure out what the future holds?
Yeah, I think that's a good question, Lance. I mean, we certainly have depth until you don't, and I think we ran into it a little bit this year, honestly, where we had a number of injuries, guys go down. Like we said, I think it was Frelick and Mitchell went down just about the same day. So you have a lot of outfielders and then all of a sudden you don't. And so I think we're conscious of that. And so I think just continuing to add to that talent is a good thing for us.
Steve?
You've got a few notable players, Corbin Burns, Willie Adames, Brandon Woodruff, all set to become free agents after 2024. Just how comfortable would you be if having those three guys all in the last year of their contracts and on the roster next year? And how does Woodruff's shoulder issue kind of play into all this in terms of trying to decide whether to do an extension or whatever?
Yeah, I mean, the short answer is that we're extremely comfortable having them. I think that they're all very valuable players to our franchise. We recognize that this would be the last year of control for the franchise. But at the same time, we know how valuable they are to us for sure. And again, it's on the Woodruff front, it's just a little bit too soon, a little premature to assess where he's going to be for next year.
Todd? Did you still have something? Todd?
No microphone.
I don't want to break any rules.
Simon says. Yeah, Simon says. Yeah.
Matt, we're about, I think, a little less than a year away from when you were sitting up there last year, taking the job over. When you look back at the entirety of the year, how would you summarize, like, what's it been like for you? What are you most proud of?
Yeah, it's really rewarding. It's humbling in a lot of ways. I feel like you represent a lot of people in this chair, but I'm thrilled to be surrounded by a lot of the guys in the back here and a lot of people that aren't here that have done just an amazing job, and it really is an awesome responsibility. I'm certainly thankful for the opportunity for sure.
Sophia, to your right.
As you guys get more information about Woody and what that might mean for him next year, I mean, in regards to the pitching depth, how much will that affect the decision-making moving forward? And even like someone like a Colin Ray or Wade Miley, how they might factor into the picture as well?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's certainly on the front of our mind. Certainly anytime you have the opportunity to add to your starting pitching depth, that has been the driver of our success here for a number of years, and we're certainly aware of that. I think our team's going to be looking into that, I think, aggressively here over the course of the offseason.
Kurt?
Matt, on the Burns note, there's going to be lots of speculation externally about what happens with him this offseason, if he's playing here, somewhere else next year. What would your message be to people wondering about that going into the offseason?
Yeah, Corbin means a ton to what we've done here. I mean, he's a warrior on the mound. He's the guy we wanted in Game 1. He's been the guy that we want on the mound in big games, and I'm thrilled that he's here. And so we'll see how it plays out over the course of the offseason, but I would expect him to be a Brewer here next year. We can never close the door on any conversations, as you guys know. I think that's just the reality of where we are. But we know that he is a very, very valuable member of our franchise.
Kind of to follow up on that, Matt, for a long time, this organization has been clear that you have to consistently turn over the talent to new talent. So can you, in general terms, about those three guys heading into their last ARB year, how important is just the decision for the next 5 years for the franchise of what happens with particularly those three super talented players?
Yeah, it is. And look, I think the the foundation here is that they're here and they're really good players for us. And so I think that's what we're working off of. Obviously, anything can happen over the course of an offseason. We'll certainly have to entertain a lot of different discussions, I think, but we recognize the value of these players and how much they mean to our franchise.
Matt, going back to free agency for just a sec, the news of Keston Hiura electing free agency, obviously had a big year in Nashville, never seemed to get a lot of time at the major league level. Why do you think he wasn't able to find that consistent spot?
Yeah, he did everything right. I mean, Keston is a great teammate and a great player. We just ultimately over the course of the season, I think at the start, there were possibilities, I think, and those probably shrunk a little bit after the trade deadline once we acquired guys like Santana and Canna. But I think he's put himself in position to be a good player in the league, I think, for a long time.
Matt, when you look back at the season that Jesse Winker had, in the final analysis, do you think that it was health that kind of prevented him from being the player that you guys thought he would be?
Yeah, I think largely, and that's honestly why he was a factor for us in the playoff discussion. I think he did come back and was healthier. He did a really nice job in AAA. A lot of people don't see that, but to his credit, he worked his tail off. He lost a lot of weight. He got in really good shape. He just battled through a lot of injuries this year. This guy has a long track record of hitting. Unfortunately, he's just battled with injuries for the most part, but I think he's going to have success in the future.
Hunter to your left.
You know, Matt, last year you had lots of home runs. This year, kind of on the other side of that. How do you square that? And do you want to have more balance going forward, or did you like the other ways your offense was able to score runs this season?
Yeah, I like homers. I certainly do. But at the same time, I think it's always a balance depending on the profile, right? I think we're trying to get wins, and I think we were able to do that. But obviously, we would prefer guys hit homers and do all the other things really well. We just have to balance that with the talent that we have on our roster.
Willie.
You had plenty of rookies that were part of pretty big games and pretty big moments, Sal, Joey, et cetera. What do you think allowed those guys to have such success with the ball club this year?
Yeah, I think it starts with them as people. I mean, those guys are special young guys. I've talked to some of our veteran players, and they really say really positive things about these guys, which is unique sometimes for veteran guys because their standards are so high. But when you hear them talk about them, not just as players, but as people, they're the kind of guys that you can see as future leaders here with the organization.
Dennis.
You see what the Diamondbacks are doing to the Dodgers, do you think, hey, that should be us?
Sometimes. Yeah. I mean, I'm watching, but it's hard because I feel like we had the talent to do just that. But credit to the Diamondbacks for what they did here. They did a good job. They outplayed us. I think it's important to recognize Mike Hazen. I think what he's done in Arizona and what he's overcome, just personally, I think is an enormous credit to him and that franchise. So credit to those guys. They did a really good job.
Matt, council aside, do you anticipate any changes on the coaching staff or keeping that unit similar?
I think given the Craig situation, it's not finalized, but I would hope that we bring everybody back.
Lance.
Matt, you mentioned a couple times getting to the last game, winning the last game, and getting the World Series. What young players, and there is a lot of excitement around the young players, but what players do you hang your hat on and say these guys can get us there?
Yeah, I don't know if I should name them by name because I might be here a little while, but I'm excited about our young group is what I would say. There are guys we saw on TV this year in the big leagues. I think there are a lot of young guys. We've been, knock on wood, we've had good success with our acquisition processes through trades, through the draft internationally. I think our players of the year came from all different forms of acquisition, which is certainly a credit to our staff. So I think it's going to come from a lot of places, and I'm excited about the future here.
JR.
Okay, forgive me because I want to name a young guy. Jackson Churio, your farm system in general took a big leap forward in terms of perception this year. So I'd be curious how aggressive you're going to be about having those guys contend for spots right out of the gate in 2024. I'm specifically asking about Jackson Churio, but some of the pitchers as well.
Yeah, look, I think those guys have put themselves in position to help us, and I think we've moved these guys pretty aggressively too. We want to move these guys through the system. We want them to help us here, and Jackson has certainly done that. It's hard to put a timetable on it. I mean, for a 19-year-old, but he has a chance to be really special.
Matt, in your exit interviews, did any kind of unforeseen injury things pop up? Anybody gonna have surgery or anything like that in the offseason, or is everybody relatively clean and healthy there?
Not that I can think of. I'll certainly, I'll circle back with you and let you know if there's anything that popped up, but not to my knowledge. Anything beyond what you guys have already heard.
And we'll go back to Adam.
Matt, Jacob Mizorowski didn't, he had to shut down early. Where is he right now? And what do you see for next season starting versus relieving, and whether he's someone you look at in spring training?
Yeah, he was somebody we were just mainly being cautious with. I think he's a guy, like we've talked about, has a tremendous upside. Hard to even put a cap on what that could be, because he's got every ingredient to be a number one starter. We hope that that's the case, but again, you never know with young guys. I don't want to put that on him specifically, but he certainly has the ingredients to do that.
Is there any update on whether he's healthy again, throwing again?
Yeah, he's throwing. I think our guys can give you a better update probably than I can, but I know that he's throwing and he should be fine, for next year for sure.
Stephanie?
Could you just touch upon Christian Yelich's performance this past season, and how long do you think he, will be here with you guys with the Brewers?
Yeah, hopefully a long time. I mean, he did a great job this year. I mean, a huge credit to what he's been able to accomplish, and he's always been a leader here, and it's just about him being healthy, and he was healthy this year, and he did a great job. I'm really proud of Christian.
JR?
You guys had so many arbitration eligible guys last year and got almost all of them done, and then the one that you didn't get done became kind of the headline. So is there anything the Brewers can or will do differently in the arbitration process this year, knowing, you got another big group of guys going through the same thing?
Yeah, I think we learned some lessons from that for sure. I think we've had it's a messy process just in general. I don't love it. I don't know if anybody does, to be honest. I wish there was a better way to do it. It's just the reality of what the owners and players that have agreed upon, and so it can get messy for sure. But I know that our players know that we have a lot of respect for all of them and what they've done and accomplished here for sure.
Go back to Lance.
Matt, obviously, as well as anybody, there's a lot of different ways you can construct a team, but with the uncertainty at first and third and those being traditional power positions, do you feel like you need one or both in the offseason?
Yeah, I do. I think there's a way we can certainly improve there. And obviously liked what we got out of Monasterio this year at third base for sure. I think we like what we see out of Tyler Black. We'll see what he ends up being at third or first, but he's got a lot of upside as well and could factor into the situation for next year, potentially early on.
And back to Kurt.
Matt, what areas of this team surprised you in a good way this year? Maybe performed better than you guys were anticipating?
Maybe our bullpen. I think at the start of the year we had a lot of unknowns. There was a lot of churn there. I think, as we talked about, I think we used something close to 60 players this year. I think there were a lot of unknowns there, and I think a lot of guys stepped up. Outside of Devin, obviously, I mean, he's the bedrock of our bullpen, but I think a lot of guys stepped up and did a really good job in our pen this year.
Sophia?
How did the production that you guys got from William Contreras meet or exceed the expectations you had when you guys acquired him in the offseason? And also just now that he's got a full year with the pitching staff, what that will mean for him when he starts next season?
Yeah, our staff has raved about him, and it's only gotten better, honestly. And it's hard to say just in a small amount of time how much he meant to our team. He plays his tail off. I mean, he is a warrior back there, and he's only getting better because he's so young. And we saw it in the playoffs, like gunning down guys defensively. What he does with working with pitchers, offensively, he's got every ingredient to be a really good player, and I'm thrilled that we have him.
Matt, Bryce Strang played such spectacular defense at second, but I'm guessing you guys thought he might hit a little more, or certainly wanted a little more. What do you think his future looks like, and kind of what was the analysis of his season offensively?
Yeah, look, I mean, there are very few guys that come up to the big leagues and just rake immediately, but I think that's in there for him. He's had success in the minor leagues hitting for sure. He showed flashes of it. I think sometimes with his profile, he has enough power to hit a ball on the second deck. In batting practice, for sure, he can also hit line drives the other way, he can bunt, he can run. So I think it's just sort of figuring out a little bit what his profile should be at the big league level, because he's talented enough to do it in a lot of different ways.
Back to Kirk.
Well, on the topic of some other rookies at the plate, just what did you make of Joey's season, and then Felix as well? Obviously, really good defense. So just specifically like on offense.
Yeah, I think both of those guys showed flashes. Again, it's tough to come up to the big leagues and hit right away. Both of those guys were carriers of us at times, and then sometimes they'd show flashes where you'd scratch your head a little bit. But that's to be anticipated from young players, and both of those guys are very talented, very athletic, play their tails off. Like we saw that collision in New York at the wall. I mean, they're just going to go get it. They're going to run through the wall, and that's what we love about those guys.
Take a couple more. Adam?
Matt, have any of your guys followed David to New York, and do you anticipate that, or do you think the front office will remain pretty stable?
Yeah, first and foremost, I want what's best for our staff, but hopefully it's here. I think I'm anticipating our group staying together, but I always want people first. And so if there's a better situation for someone else, I would always want that to be the case. But I think we have a really good group here, and I anticipate everybody being here.